The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, I want to welcome everyone to the last day of NESAW webinars. We've had a pretty good attendance for the last several, and today we will be we'll have Troy Hinkle and Brian Cruz presenting about the Indiana CISMA project. Troy Hinkle is the Development Director for Knox County Soil and Water Conservation District in, how do you pronounce that city? Vincennes, Indiana, and a member of the steering committee for Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasives Management. Troy worked with the Indiana NRCS State Office on the development of a contribution agreement to develop CISMAs in Indiana and has helped secure additional funding to match the contribution agreement funds. Brian, do you want to give a short background on yourself?
Sure. I'm Brian Cruz, and I'm the Indiana NRCS State Forester, and I'm out of the state office in Indianapolis.
Okay, so we are recording this presentation as we did for the other webinars. These recordings will be made available through the NESAW and the National EPC websites. You can ask questions in the questions pane on the GoToWebinar panel, and we will ask them at the end of the session. Those questions and the answers will also be recorded. So I think we have a good number of attendees who have showed up so far, so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. Welcome, everyone. We want to spend just a little time, an effort going on in Indiana to start some CISMAs, or Cooperative Invasive Species Management Areas, a joint project between Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasives Management and Indiana NRCS. And what that agreement is doing, and how successful it's been, and what we plan to do to keep our funding going, to keep the initiative going.
Troy, are you sharing your screen yet?
I am. Apparently you're not seeing it.
No, we just have that NESAW logo. I was telling you that shows up sometimes. So I have you as the presenter. So.
How about now?
Yep, there you go. Okay, and you need to switch the screens because we're seeing what you should be seeing.
Okay, I have a slide up on SICM now. Is that what you're seeing?
I'm seeing the slide and the preview of the next slide. Okay. So that's the screen I'm seeing.
All right, let me see if I can fix that. Okay, how's that?
That's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yep. Okay, that looks good.
All right, I'll do it from my screen. All right, so Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasive Management, or CISMA, is an organization that started in 2008, and it was a group of agency professionals and committed citizens or concerned citizens who wanted to see the issue of invasive species began to be addressed in Southern Indiana. So CISMA has a 35 county service area, which is about a third of the state of Indiana, a wide range of landscapes, and CISMA began to make some headway in getting the word out to people and doing some public education, holding field days, training events, and that sort of thing. But quickly began to realize that the fight against invasive species in Indiana was not going to make any real headway until we had local groups addressing the issue. And so about 4 years ago, CISMA started a project to develop CISMAs at a county level, and in some cases are typically in partnership with the Soil and Water Conservation District. road, and there were 3 or 4 counties that were able to start their own CISMAs, in addition to a handful that were already there. And we realized that this was the way to go, and it was showing some success. And of course, our limitation was staff. We were a volunteer organization at the time, didn't have any staff to carry water for the organization, and didn't have any funding to hire staff. And so we began looking around for sources of money that we could use to hire staff to carry on this CISMA creation project. And we wound up talking with Jane Hardesty, who at the time was the state conservationist for NRCS in Indiana. And we pitched the idea to her of putting together a contribution agreement between NRCS and SICM to provide some funds for SICM to hire staff to begin working with these soil and water conservation districts at the county level to develop CISMAs. And Jane was amenable to the idea. In fact, she said she'd been waiting for someone to come along and do that, but she said she wanted to challenge us to take on the project, not for just southern Indiana and the 35 counties in SICM service area, but for the entire state, so 92 counties. So the SICM Steering Committee decided to go ahead and do that. We needed a partner like NRCS, and it seemed like a match made in heaven on that road. And I'm going to hand it over to Brian here for a minute, and he's going to talk about why NRCS was the logical partner for SICM in this initiative. And Brian, I'll see if I can get my screen to change here. Not having any luck. We'll do it the hard way. Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
There we go. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Troy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit about contribution agreements. So Indiana NRCS has established the strong partnerships with various state conservation groups, districts, and other agencies, and some nonprofits. And recently, changes within the Indiana Department of Natural Resources and NRCS's more limited ability to hire new employees and also to quickly fill some open positions kind of contributed to this contribution agreement, and particularly one with Pheasants Forever. So Indiana NRCS decided to use available funds through various programs such as the Conservation Reserve Program, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program to enter into a contribution agreement with Pheasants Forever. So in 2015, NRCS entered into a 3-year contribution agreement with Pheasants Forever to hire 4 wildlife biologists, and we kind of call them farm bill biologists. And they are hired to service areas of Indiana that were not available to be fully serviced by wildlife biologists from the Indiana Department of Natural Resources. And these Pheasants Forever employees are housed in NRCS offices with NRCS computers. They do use their own vehicles, but are reimbursed mileage by Pheasants Forever. They are employed by Pheasants Forever, and NRCS does contribute to Pheasants Forever to pay them. Some of the deliverables for the agreement are to provide a certain number of landowner contacts, management plans, practice certifications, put on workshops, training, and educational / outreach activities. So Indiana NRCS modeled the contribution agreement with SICMs off of this agreement with Pheasants Forever. And now talk about financial assistance from NRCS to do the actual work to control invasive plant species, and some technical assistance mainly comes from 2 voluntary programs. They are the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, and the Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP. These programs provide a payment to the participant to implement the work. Often in Indiana, the participant hires a contractor to do the work. Work is sometimes a lot of work and rather hard to do. So then they then complete or complement themselves in paying the contractor. So next slide. kind of talk about EQIP briefly. EQIP mainly utilizes brush management, the 314, and herbaceous weed treatment, 315 practices to control invasives. The technical assistance can come from conservation activity plans, also called CAP plans. These are written by a technical service provider for NRCS. Since many of the Indiana's invasive species are found in woodland situations, a forest plan is utilized. Landowners can utilize the CAP plan, or they often use a forest stewardship plan written by the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, their district foresters for that. Regardless of whether the plan comes from EQIP or not, the EQIP policy requires some type of forest plan whenever practices are planned to address resource concerns on forest land. So they need a plan no matter who it comes from. And then lastly, through EQIP, grazing CAP plans, so those are those conservation activity plans, fish and wildlife CAPs, pollinator habitat enhancement CAPs, and other CAP plans may also be used to address needed planning for controlling invasive species. NRCS pays the landowners through EQIP contracts for these CAP plans, and then the landowner in turn pays an approved technical service provider to write those plans. Next slide. And a look at our 314 brush management practice. This is to control invasive woody and vine species. Indiana has chosen 16 species to control with this practice scenario. Some of these include ailanthus, bush honeysuckle, autumn olive, Japanese honeysuckle, and multiflora rose. Those are kind of the main big ones in the state. This list of species that Indiana felt would be able to be controlled at given 3 different treatments. So all 16 species must be controlled on those acres with this practice. So it's not an option to pick and choose which of the 16 species you're going to control. You pretty much, if you're going to sign up for the practice, you have to control all of those. And the plan owner specifies the final percent cover. Typically, this is less than 10%, so a lot of them say maybe 5% or 2% over the area, and this is dependent on the species. So for example, final percent cover multiflora rose may be less of a concern than controlling maybe ailanthus that you might want to get under either complete control or maybe a 2% control. And then these are
Brian? We may have lost your
Troy.
sound. Or, I'm sorry, who was speaking?
This
Brian.
is Troy still here.
Okay, we had lost
Okay,
sound.
can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Probably get too excited. I probably hit something.
Okay.
So as you can see at the bottom of the slide, those are the 2018 rates for Indiana. The high rate is pretty good. So with that, you should be able to get some big or some medium-sized equipment, such as a Fecon grinder in there to do the work. Next slide. For herbaceous weed control, this is used for herbaceous species in 3 different species. Those are Japanese stiltgrass, Serratia lesbideza, and spotted knapweed in Indiana. And these again are a 3-year payments at successively lower payments each year. So there we would start out with a high or a blanket rate and then move to medium spot rate the next year, and then the last year would be a light spot rate. Let's go to the next slide. Then just briefly talk about the Conservation Security Program, or CSP. CSP is mainly uses enhancements, but can also use practices to control invasives. There are many enhancements to choose from, probably too many to cover all in one day. And these are typically enhancements with the E314, E315, and E666 numbers. The enhancements used to control invasive plant species will have descriptions with wording such as to control or treat undesirable and or understory species. That's how you know if you can kind of use those practices for invasives or not. And due to low payments and specific criteria for the 314 and 315 enhancements, Indiana NRCS kind of encourages our planners to use those enhancements as more of a maintenance to control some of the populations, whereas the 666 enhancements are much better payment and could be used to control that initial treatment for those populations. That's all I'm going to talk about with CSP. It can be a good program for you. So I will let Troy take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Brian. All right, so those are some of the cost share practices that NRCS in Indiana has for controlling invasive species, and CISMA and its partners where those will come into play is CISMA and its partners will feed landowners into those practices or those programs as they fit into them. So that gives us quite a bit of money for cost share for actually controlling invasives, and a lot of times that's one of the limiting factors. Is there are a lot of people that want to control invasives but lack the wherewithal to do so. So to the extent that we can feed people into these NRCS programs, that gives us money that we can use to make some headway against these invasive species. So the contribution agreement itself, there are several purposes of it. Of course, it's to promote awareness of invasive plant species in Indiana, educate the general public, and also we work heavily with what we call the Indiana Conservation Partnership, and that's NRCS, the Farm Service Agencies, the SWCDs in Indiana, the State Department of Agriculture, Department of Natural Resources, Purdue Extension, and Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And we work with those partners and their agency staff to help them identify and manage and control invasives on their properties, and train their staff to identify them so that when they're working with landowners, they can have that information as well. And of course, the big thrust behind this is to establish CISMAs around Indiana. Indiana does not have a tremendous amount of funding at the state level for conservation activities, and so Indiana has probably lagged a lot of states in the development of CISMAs because there's not been any money from the legislature to do that. We'll probably be able to do it without that, but that's one of the reasons Indiana is probably a little behind some states. So this contribution agreement will provide, as much as half of the funding that we're going to need to do that CISMA creation around the state of Indiana. The contribution agreement is a 50-50 partnership between NRCS and CISMA. So CISMA is out raising money to match the money that NRCS has put on the table, and NRCS has put $917,000 into this 5-year agreement, and then CISMA is going to come up with an amount equal to that, and hopefully greater than that, so that we will have enough funds to hire the staff to get the job done in the 5 years that we want to do it in. So we, again, most of the money in the contribution agreement is going towards staff, and the reason for that is instead of spending money on invasive control, we're spending it on staff because we know that if we're going to develop these CISMAs around the state, it's going to take people to do that. So we're hiring 4 full-time specialists and a part-time coordinator. And these full-time specialists will be traveling around their areas to work with SWCDs or other partners in the various counties to get them started on the path to creating a CISMA. And we're not going to do it for them, but the idea is that if we have a group that's interested, we will come alongside and help and do anything that we can to make it get up on its feet and successful. So, we'll do everything from organizing call-out meetings to helping district staff identify the folks in their county who would be CISMA. We will help them find sources of funding at the local level so that they can hire their own staff or maybe have cost share programs. We will do lots of training, not just for the conservation partnership staff, but also for just Joe Q public to come to a training session at a county park and learn how to identify and control invasives. Excuse me. So these specialists are going to be doing quite a bit of work, but again, the focus of everything that they're doing is to help establish CISMAs in every county in Indiana. And I guess I've mentioned most of that already, but you can see there some of the things that they'll be doing. There at the bottom, you noticed a couple of items, right management plans to landowners and provide one-on-one technical assistance to landowners. And that's one of the things that we have as a deliverable in the contribution agreement within RCS is, in addition to working on the CISMAs, we want to be out there working with landowners as well, and walking the land, helping them to identify the invasive species they have, and then helping them come up with plans where they can control those invasive species. Now, whether or not they go in RCS office and get involved in a program, that's up to them. A lot of people will try to do this on their own if they have a small acreage. So we want to make sure that they have the wherewithal to do that, the necessary skills and access to the tools. And so our specialists will be doing some of that as well, just one-on-one technical assistance to landowners. And then our program coordinator is kind of riding herd on all of this. And in addition to overseeing the work of the specialist, the program coordinator is going to work with other organizations in Indiana to help form sort of an umbrella organization, for lack of a better term, for all of these invasive species activities that are going on. There's no one organization that kind of speaks for the issue in Indiana. There are several organizations that have little pieces of it here and there, and so this coordinator will also be working to help develop that organization at the state level that can kind of address the issue as a central point, if I can say it that way. All right, in this slide you can see that our goal in the contribution agreement is for 60 CISMAs in Indiana. That's 12 per year. We're hoping we can get to 92. Whether we do that in 5 years or not, we don't know, but that's our ultimate goal. And you can see we have just a few CISMAs in Indiana right now. I won't read through all those for you because they probably won't mean anything to you, but I guess the gist of this is out of 92 counties in Indiana, we've got maybe eight counties that are covered by a CISMA. And so we've got quite a bit of work to do. We've got several counties where we have great interest. And so the list that you see there will hopefully grow by about another 12 to 15 by the end of this year. And I won't go into too much detail on CISMAs because I assume that most of you folks that are listening in on this call know what a CISMA is and what it does. But it's people out there taking care of their own land and helping others take care of their land, coming up with projects, doing training programs, and doing some communications work as well, getting articles in the paper, spots on the radio, doing presentations in front of civic groups, and all those fun things. Early detection, rapid response. We all know how important that is, and so that's one of the things that CICM is involved in, the EDD maps, and also that's something that we are stressing to the CISMAs that are starting up as well. That prioritizing on the invasives that you have, and also making sure that you're aware of what's out there and coming your way, so that you can be ready to identify it when it gets there. And we're also helping some of the districts and other partners that are wanting to start their CISMAs. We're going to try to secure or help them secure funding so they can hire their own staff. One of the things that's very key in this is just having someone on staff who can pay attention to the issue. And so most SWCDs in Indiana are not super well funded, and so it's difficult for them to have staff that are dedicated to this issue, and the staff they do have are pretty busy. So we're going to be working with our partners to find funds from local and regional funders, foundations, whatnot, so that they can hire staff to get these CISMAs going and really get the work begun in their county. Because I think our experience with this has been that, if you can get somebody on staff for a couple years or 3 years to really make some headway and raise some awareness in a given county, then there becomes sort of a groundswell of support for the idea of having somebody on staff at a district and being able to get a county council to put up some money for that. So we're hoping that'll be a part of the sustainability of this program as it goes on down the road is helping those local partners find the funds they need so that they can get people on staff and start making some headway and then be able to sustain that funding going on. Okay.
Okay,
And,
can you hear me now? Yep.
Yes, we can.
Okay, had it on mute. So Indiana NRCS, our field staff, primarily our district conservationists or DCs, have been very interested in their role in this and what would be asked of them in the partnership and with their local CISMA. So NRCS has given out some basic guidance to the field. So your particular state NRCS may choose, to be more or less active than what guidance we've given to our employees. But Indiana NRCS will be an active partner and help build support in the local CISMA. The DCs can be on steering committees, but we've kind of informed people not to be the chair of the committee or lead the committee. And DC should inform the group about NRCS technical assistance and our financial assistance opportunities. They should also help identify the key people in the area that would make good members to the group, and also help provide input on comprehensive plans in meeting the NRCS practice standards. DCs are also encouraged to attend workshops and training hosted by their CISMA and hopefully be participating in those events. So, we've kind of hoped that the CISMA agreement will help out our DCs rather than be, I guess, an additional burden to manage for them, since in most cases NRCS is kind of the only show in town when it comes to land actually moving forward on invasive treatment and that work. So thus the need is to keep their local, I guess, motivated landowners and partners to lead the CISMA rather than NRCS leading it. Okay, Troy, next slide.
I'm trying. There we go.
And I can take this one if you want, but
Okay.
With this agreement, NRCS will be paying SICMs for certain deliverables, and then SICM will be reimbursing the CISMA for these items. So they kind of come in three main categories. Educational events, so we're looking at up to 12 per year for an educational event. Management plans, up to 40 of those, and then that one-on-one technical assistance. And these are likely to be smaller acreage in size. Here in the state, we have a program through the Indiana Department of Natural Resources for classified forest. So a lot of times they have a minimum acreage cap for forest land that they'll assist with. So we are thinking that a lot of these technical assistance will come to some of those landowners that aren't receiving assistance from the local DNR. And these are up to 80 per year. So I don't know, Troy, if you had anything more to contribute to that slide.
That's the gist of it. All right, I guess we'll entertain some questions now. I would like to throw in a couple of other things right here at the end. As we mentioned, we've had some success in getting some CISMA started, and even with this NRCS agreement, just over the past 6 months, we've had quite a bit of interest. So We have about a dozen SWCDs in Indiana that are actively working on getting CISMA started in their county. In a couple cases, they've been able to hire some staff to facilitate that. And we have about another 15 counties that have expressed interest and said, yeah, we would like to do that. And so as soon as we have the staff in their area that can work with them, we will start working with those counties as well to get districts started and developing their CISMA. So we've been very happy with the response that we've gotten from this. I think we're going to have to hold on for the ride because I think it's an issue that's really gained some momentum, and folks are beginning to be aware of it enough to know that it's a problem that has to be addressed. And the districts and NRCS know that in most counties they're going to have to be the ones to address it because there's just not another organization there that can do that. So we've seen some good results with this. And we hope to have great things to report in the future. And I guess that's all I really have to say. So Liz, or sorry, Rebecca, if there are questions that we could answer.
Yes, there are a few questions. Nancy Olmsted asked, are the NRCS payments for education events, technical assistance, etc., in addition to the contribution agreement or part of it?
Yes, they are part of it. So those payments are payments through the contribution agreement.
Okay. Elizabeth asked, are the CISMAs just focused on weeds, or will they work on other species as well?
For the most part, right now it's weeds, and I guess Brian, you can chime in on this too. We know there are lots of insects to be on the lookout for, some aquatic stuff, and so those are part of it as well. But I would say for right now, for most of Indiana, it's the plants that get the most attention. We do have some partnership with Purdue Extension, and they're bringing more of the entomology into it, raising awareness among the CISMAs on that front as well. So I think that although the weeds are the biggest part of it right now, or the plants, I think the other, the insects and the animals will become a more integral part of that as this goes on.
And I do think, Troy, Indiana has got some wetlands and quite a few little ponds and lakes and stuff out there. So that, with Indiana, there are quite a few aquatic invasive plants out there. So I can imagine some of these CISMAs will probably have some local lake management groups involved with them, when that's an issue.
Yeah, and that brings up an important point. One of the great things about having a local CISMA is that they're able to address their local invasives issues. So, in northern Indiana, they have lots of lakes, and so they have problems with LOD and different things. And so, they're going to focus on the things that are problems in their county, and those are going to be different than the problems that we have maybe in Knox County or somewhere down in southern Indiana.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for those answers. Amber asked, will the CISMA groups be required to go through the soil water conservation districts?
We're not making that a requirement. Adopted the approach of working first with the SWCDs. If for no other reason, then it's going to be an interest they have, and in most cases they'll have staff who can give it at least a little bit of attention, but we certainly don't want to restrict it to that. And in fact, we have 2 or 3 counties where we have CISMAs that are not an outgrowth of the SWCD. It's just maybe a group of concerned citizens that have gotten together and formed the CISMA without the SWCD.
Okay. Sherry asked, how do we make the NRCS and other states aware of this type of partnership?
I'll let Brian tackle that one.
Make people aware? It's hard to make people aware.
Yeah.
So, NRCS, we're putting on training them for our employees and put out a bulletin and go to some of the area meetings to inform our staff of CISMAs and how this agreement is all going to work. But, as far as the CISMA, getting out the word to others, going to be a little bit different. Probably may or may not always come from NRCS. Yeah, so it's really going to depend on your state and how active NRCS is.
Okay, Nancy asked, will SICM be giving the CISMAs directions in terms of how to set priorities or how to set goals and objectives? One of the difficult things about getting a CISMA off the ground is identifying what it should do. Will you provide guidance?
Yes, we will. In fact, we have just the beginning of an agreement with Purdue Extension, and they have a program that does exactly that. It's a multi-session program where that's facilitated, and they have trained folks who walk the participants through to identify what the needs are, how to prioritize those, and how to find the necessary resources to go and tackle those problems. So that's probably not going to start en masse until late this fall, when Purdue has that program printed and has some facilitators trained. But that's certainly something we want to do. I mean, we want to do everything we can to help these CISMA become successful, and helping them identify and prioritize is certainly part of that process.
Okay, and Sherry asked, how does the NRCS reimbursement to CISMAs work? Where will the CISMAs get their money for upfront expenses that will be reimbursed for education events, management plans, technical assistance?
You want me to take that one, Brian, or you want to?
You can go ahead, and
Okay.
I'll fill in if there's any gaps.
All right, so the way that works is the payments from NRCS for activities are in arrears. So, for example, if we have a CISMA in Pike County that says, hey, we would love to put on a training event, what will happen is we will have the event, and they will probably have to put up funds for that. SICM can certainly help cover some of those expenses and provide staff and training and whatnot, or trainers. And then after the event, then we can submit to NRCS for reimbursement for that event. And the money will come directly to SICM, since SICM is the organization that has holds the agreement with NRCS. And then SICM can pass some of that money down to the CISMA to help cover whatever costs were incurred. So it's a little bit of a convoluted process, but it is reimbursement in arrears for deliverables, and so the money comes after the fact. But you know, we'll try to do everything we can to make sure that's not a limiting factor for districts. So if somebody wants to put on a CISMA event and they don't quite have the funding, we might be able to find other ways to get that project done before we get paid for the project from NRCS.
Okay, so Nancy has a question. Is the contribution agreement at the discretion of the state conservationist, or how did this exactly come about? Was it a competitive grant process?
No, it came really with Troy and others from SICM's meeting with our state con, and she had, you know, available money at the time through some of our programs. So it's one of those where we needed it. They were the ones that proposed it and went forward with it.
Yes, and it is not a competitive grant program. But if you're interested in doing something like that with NRCS in your state, be happy to have anybody contact Brian or I and kind of walk them through how that happened here. NRCS is different in different states, and so the avenues may be a little bit different, but I'd be happy to work with anybody who's interested in taking that route to see what they might need to do.
And Troy, we might also want to mention that you guys have also got some other grants and some other funds to help with that 50-50 match too.
Yeah, we have. We've secured $300,000 from the Indiana State Soil Conservation Board. They give us a 5-year grant, so we'll get that money in 5 installments. We received some funding from the Indiana Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts. And we also have a partnership with the Nature Conservancy Indiana chapter, and they're providing for us to help fill one of those positions. But that's tantamount to having money in the bank, so that's helped with some of the funding as well. So we still have a little ways to go on the funding, but we've probably gotten a little farther by now than we thought we would be.
Okay, Sherry had another question. Who in the NRCS in each state should we contact to discuss the possibility of implementing this program? I am in Florida and we already have CISMAs covering the entire state, but we need funding.
So CICMs went to the state conservationist and assistant state conservationist and discussed it with them. I don't know, Troy, did.
Yeah, that's correct. I would say if someone's interested in that, if they know they're, well, I'm not sure that all states have area conservationists,
Right.
but if you know someone in NRCS at maybe a mid-management level in your state, you might have a conversation with them and kind of pitch the idea to them, and they may be able to get you a meeting with the state conservation or the assistant state con to kind of let them know what you want to try to do and see if there's a way that they can get some funds for a contribution agreement. But I guess I'd start with whoever you know there and work up the chain. If you happen to know the state con, then I'd say give them a call.
Yeah, and Indiana's unique in that we had money available. Other states, may or may not. So it's going to be variable throughout the states.
Okay, so that may be the end of questions. We don't have any more in the queue. Any other final thoughts, Brian or Troy? Or experience, tips of wisdom, anything?
We're just starting this out, so it's already up and going like gangbusters. So we'll hold on for the ride.
Yep. Just thank you to everybody that listened in today. We're pretty excited about what's happening with this in Indiana. We're probably a little bit behind a lot of states, but we do have this fantastic partnership between CICM and NRCS. It's making some things happen that wouldn't otherwise not have happened. And I guess too, if this kind of thing is something that you're interested in for states that don't have CISMAs, and if NRCS is not able to help in your state, there may be other funders that would be happy to do this if you came to them with a proposal. So I wouldn't limit yourself just to thinking NRCS, although if you can get them as a partner, that would be very much to your advantage.
Couple more last minute questions. Would you be willing to present next year to give an update?
Yeah, I think we would do that. I'll speak for Brian.
You volunteer him.
As long as they meet all their deliverables.
As long as you have good things to report.
Yeah.
Okay, and Nancy wanted to kind of clarify her question. What advice would you give someone looking to do this? So looking to sway your state conservationist or whatever may be the equivalent position in a person's state.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Troy, you got a good spokesman, Ray Chapman. I mean, he's
I guess
the state con.
Yeah, is to find people that are passionate about it, whose circles of influence also may overlap those of the state conservationist, or if you have an association of soil and water conservation districts in your state, which you probably do, whoever's the executive director of that will know the NRCS state conservationist, and that might be an inroad for you as well if you're not familiar with the state con. But Brian is right. If you can find a couple people who are passionate about the issue, who move, at the state level or in the conservation world in your state, I'd say tap into those people and get them to approach the state con and pitch the idea to them. And but the passion is, I think kind of a key. And finding the right person shouldn't be hard. I think in most states there are invasive species activities going on, and there are people who are advocating for it tirelessly, and finding those people and getting them in front of the decision makers is probably the key.
All right, and so I think that's the end of it. We've got some thank yous, and Sherry's excited you'd be willing to present and give an update next year.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, and I want to remind everyone that these recordings will be available through the NESA and the National EPSI websites. So if you did have someone you wanted to share this information with, perhaps your state conservationist or some other equivalent positioned person, then you will be able to send them a link to these recordings to kind of give them some information on how Indiana kind of navigated their way to creating these agreements and having all these different programs that they work with. I'd like to thank Brian and Troy for presenting, and I hope to see them next year.
Quite welcome. Hope to see you as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone for attending.